Let me briefly introduce myself before we start. So my name is Grigory. I'm a political scientist, educator, civil society activist with quite of some experience in consolidating youth. So the topic that I will be covering today, the topic of conflict management and conflict resolution, is very dear to me. As you know, the conflict management is so wide. It's a wide topic, so we can talk about it for hours, for days, for weeks. We can write a thesis on that or a book. So it is very hard to cover this subject within 1 hour and a half, especially online. So I have selected a focus, hopefully that will be useful for you as young people in your daily life, because conflicts are not only about countries, it's not only about big political crisis, but it's also about people and conflicts between people. And this is what we will be focusing on today. Now I would like to switch on my presentation and share the screen. Before I start with the session, I would like to ask a couple of the participants, maybe one from Armenia, one from Germany, to share your definition of conflict. Could you please do that? You have, let's say, a few seconds to think about it and share with us what do you understand when you say conflict, and what is the positive and negative aspect of it. So if you would like to share, please raise your digital hands, then switch on your cameras and please contribute. So I see there is a hand from Dr. Hay, if that's correct, a hand from Mika, and from Anna. So if you can proceed in that order, please.
Thank you very much for the nice topic, actually. And just few ideas, just first thought about conflict, but it came to my mind. If I think in some way, and probably another person may think in different way, so it can be the cause of the conflict. That means two ideas, two opinions, or two interests may not go in the same way. And what this conflict may cause, from the conflict, it can be a disturbing point. Yes, it can create a disturbance. And in this situation, some people might be very furious, nervous, or may not think or decide very positively or in the cool way. So I think it is the negative point, but also conflict can bring something new. That is the, that may be the another thought, that what conflict may bring. Thank you. Probably that's enough. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So Mika, if you could go next.
Actually, my first thought was a similar approach. The first things that came to mind is sort of an interaction between different people, different groups that have different beliefs or opinions, and that sort of creates the situation. And then, as far as I kind of imagine it, the character of the conflict is being defined by sort of the willingness to work on it, or the approaches that people have to conflicts, which sort of then makes a difference of what it is like in the end. And about good things, I don't know if I see immediately something good about conflicts itself, but rather maybe competition or sort of a healthy discussion, which maybe sometimes seem like a conflict. But yeah, that's my thoughts.
Thank you. Anna, if you can go next.
So for me, it's the similar as well. It's basically where two parties disagree on a certain topic. And I don't only think that it can be a disagreement between two people. Let's say some people have inner conflicts that you don't agree with, and you kind of have a debate within yourself. So it's not always between two people if we go in depth. And usually you can understand how a person thinks and behaves in general if you see them in a conflict. For example, some people may get heated, some people may be very calm and try to find common ground. It's also a good way to understand different perspectives, because sometimes we only see what we see, and when you have a conversation with someone that has a different point of view, it's also a way for you to understand how they think, and basically you can work and find a way to agree with each other.
Thank you very much for all the contributions. Today we will talk a little bit about styles of conflict management, because all of us in our lives, be it at work, be it at home, be it in our families, in our daily life, face a lot of different conflicts, obviously, no doubt about that. But the ways we are facing those conflicts are very different. So we will learn how to face them. And we will also discuss a little bit and reflect what are our individual mechanisms to cope with conflict. As you mentioned, conflict is a condition in which two or more individuals' concerns appear to be incompatible. That's basically the basic definition of the conflict. Of course, there are 3,000 different definitions, but this is the one that we will be referring today. Very often we think about conflict as a negative occurrence. However, conflict is a natural part and a healthy part of human personal and professional relationships. If any of you would tell me that you have never ever faced a conflict, I would hardly believe it, obviously. However, any conflict becomes unhealthy when it is handled in an unpredictable and violent way. And we will be talking about it further today. Before we go to the whole context of different conflict management styles, I would like to give you a background of this model. So this conflict model is called Thomas Kilmann conflict mode instrument, that has been created basically by Thomas Kilmann. And you see this diagram, right? So in this diagram, on the left part of your screen, you have the assertiveness. And on the right side, or down below, you have the cooperativeness. So basically, these are these two extremes. The assertiveness part is the degree to which you try to satisfy your own personal, individual concerns during the conflict. And the other one is the degree to which you try to satisfy the other individual's concerns during the conflict. So basically, on one side, it's you trying to win. On the other side, it's you trying to compromise. And in the graph, you also see there are 5 different styles of handling the conflict. And I would like you to think today about your own style and which strategy do you use. I will ask this question in the end when we go through all the 5 styles or 5 coping mechanisms. So there are 5 conflict styles or conflict management or conflict handling techniques: competing, collaborating, compromising, avoiding, and accommodating. So let's see what each of these strategies means. For each strategy, I have chosen an animal. And here you see a shark. Now a question to the audience. Could you please tell me, what do you understand when you look at this picture and when you think about the competing style of conflict management? Can I take one hand for now? Please raise your digital hand and try to explain how you handle a conflict in a competitive way. I don't see any hands. And I would encourage other people to participate as well. I see hands from Anna and Mika. They have already spoken. So if I can have someone else for now. Not really. Okay, Anna, could you please share with us, what do you understand by competitive way of handling the conflict?
So competitively handling, it means that you're trying to prove why your point, or you in general, trying to have the other person agree with you for you to be the superior one. Basically, it's you winning and the other person losing. And there's no common ground, really. It's you the first place and they go second. That's about it.
Well, it is perfectly explained. Thank you for that. So basically, each of the strategies that we will be talking about has its benefits and also the costs. So when we talk about competitive way of handling the conflict, it is, of course, uncooperative, it's power-oriented, and it is aimed at winning. All of us played different games when we were children, and the final goal of any game activity that we played was basically to win. So winning an argument, winning a quarrel, winning in a conflicting situation, basically the main idea of this strategy. You stand up for your rights, you believe in your position, and you try to make others believe in your position. Or you just try to win, even when you know that you are completely wrong. I think there are a lot of people around us that try to prove their points even when they're wrong, right? And this is part of human nature as well. This strategy, of course, has certain benefits. One of the benefits is that very often it requires a popular and very quick decision. And especially it's good in emergency situation when you don't really have time and you have to go forward with your job, with your task, and you basically want to quickly close the conflict. But of course, this comes at the cost. You very often can break your personal and professional relationships. You can decrease your or your colleagues' initiativeness and motivation. For example, one of the very widespread strategies when you are in a power position is firing your colleague or terminating a contract. That would be a quick win for you if you have a conflict with your colleague and you have a higher position in that hierarchy. Then comes the next conflict handling strategy or style that is called collaborating. And we have this animal chosen for this style. I totally forgot how you call this thing in English. In Armenian, we call it bu, and in English, it's who can
Owl.
tell me? Who can help me?
Oh,
Owl. That's correct. So the owl or owl. Yeah, that's an interesting way to pronounce that one. So the whole concept of this second strategy is that you work head to head with the person that you have a conflict with. And these are not necessarily personal conflicts. This could be professional conflicts as well. So you try to find a solution together to make sure that the solution is good for all the parties. So it's a win-win situation in contrast with the previous strategy. So you try to listen actively, you try to understand the other scene sides and find a creative solution when it's possible, of course. It has its benefits because you can come up with a high quality decision. It's about learning and communication, and it's about strengthening relationships even when there has been a conflict. But this also comes at cost, and it takes much more time to find this type of collaborative solution. And it is also psychologically demanding. It's always easy to prove your point, then to try to find, an alternative solution, especially when the opposite party has also got a point. Because in a conflict, every party might believe that it's right. And basically, every party might want to prove its rightfulness. Then we go to the third conflict management style that is called compromising. And here we have a fox. I think the word is very self-explanatory, so I don't have to ask you, what does it mean to compromise, right? So let's go right away to the definition. So what is compromising strategy or style? It's basically finding the mutually acceptable solution that partially satisfies both parties. It is different from collaborating because it's not a win-win. One of the parties has to compromise, and one of the parties, or both parties actually, are partially satisfied with the solution. The benefits, it's fair because both parties take a rather acceptable solution. It's quite speedy, so you can quickly find a compromise, but sometimes actually it takes quite a long time. And it helps to maintain healthy relationships. The cost is that you have to sacrifice, and the decisions that you make or the solutions that you find might not be the most optimal and might not be the best solutions that there could be. Then we go to my favorite conflict management style that is portrayed by this turtle. And this is avoiding style. I'd like to ask the audience, and hopefully we will have some more people talking today. What do you think? What is the avoiding style or turtle style of conflict management? Please raise your digital hand if you would like to talk, and then you will be given the floor. It's again Anna and Mika, but I think we are many more people in the room, so I'd like to encourage other people, Ani or Rauda or Maria, Abdul. Could you please also, Barbara, please, could you please tell us what do you think is avoiding strategy? Please, the floor is yours.
As I start, I would start with I am conflicted about having my video on. Yeah, so I think avoiding is, well, not facing the situation like how do I say it? Like head on, and rather coiling around, and maybe if I can use an example, for example, how most of the world is tackling the climate crisis by solving solutions rather than solving the problem itself. Yes, over.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you. And as we know, we talk about climate a lot within this exchange program that we're having. And very often avoiding is one of the strategies when we use talking about climate change, for example. We know it exists. We know it's a challenge for the humanity, but we try to avoid talking about it or doing something about it. And this is basically very similar when we talk about handling the conflict. So we know that there is a problem. We already identify it. We have tense relationships to a colleague or a friend or a partner, but we don't really want confrontation. We don't really want to talk about it. We want to postpone it. We want to withdraw from it. And in the end, it might actually grow into a bigger conflict. This strategy has benefits, and I think all of us at one or another stage of our lives have used the strategy. Oh, I don't want to talk about it. Leave me alone. I don't really want to get into that. I want to reduce my stress. I don't want to be stressed. So basically, sometimes it helps us to reduce the stress, stay out of any dangerous and unpleasant situation, and maybe ignore it. But the cost is that we actually decline the working relationship, we degrade decision-making, we have a lot of resentment and delay, and the result of avoidance can actually be a rather bigger conflict explosion on a later stage. And if you avoided the conflict once, you may do it twice, you may do it 3 times, and you can live your life avoiding things around you. But this is not going to help. It might leave you with a fear, disappointment, and thinking that, well, this will happen over and over again. You will find yourself in more conflicting situations where you will basically, always try to avoid it and not build real and authentic relations to your colleagues or friends. The 5th style is called accommodating. And here you have this nice teddy bear. So it's basically about killing your so-called enemies with kindness. And it's when individual neglects his or her own concerns to satisfy the concerns of the other person. Very altruistic and very kind. It's self-sacrifice, obviously. And it has benefits. It may restore your harmony, your relationships, and that's a very quick end to the conflict. So basically you agree to whatever solution there is. You agree that you are wrong or that the opposite party is right. but you basically sacrifice your concerns. You may feel loss of respect, loss of motivation, etc. A very good or a useful thought that should be there is that each of us here in the room has used or will use in one or another stage of our lives one of these 5 conflict styles. Some of them we use better than the others. We rely to some of them very often, but one person is capable of using all of these strategies in different conflicting situations, because every conflict is different and it's unique. Now, I would like to ask you to think for the next 1 minute individually and reflect, what is your primary conflict style and why? After a minute of self-reflection, I would invite 2 or 3 people to share with the group what is the conflict style you have chosen for a particular, let's say, the recent conflict you faced, why, and how did it work? So let's take 1 minute and let's think about this. Okay, so please raise your digital hand and share with us what has been the recent strategy that you have used, why and how did it work? Please, Rima, go ahead.
Hi. I usually believe that the collaboration conflict is my primary conflict style, because you can follow the procedure like like that competing, and then another one is compromising together. So if a company or if a person can go through both of these conflict management style, then I think it will result best, but the result will come best. That's why I think I will go with collaborative conflict. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing. Anyone else would like to share? Yes, please, Maria, go ahead.
Okay, so I think that it depends on the situation, because the situation says what type of conflict use, but mostly I think I try to use the collaborative one as well, because it's like benefiting the 2 sides, and it's into also improving relationship between the conflict sides. So I think mostly this one is preferable. But as for the only one choosing, as I've already said, I think it depends.
Yes, please, go ahead.
Yes, thank you for. I'm not sure about the negative side of the collaborating style of conflict management, but I am in favor of compromising style, because then both parties are partially also just motivated, or at least convinced, and probably both parties are not losing the dignity, respect, and motivation. So I liked the way, actually, the compromising style of conflict management. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I apologize for the background music. Do you still hear it or not really?
Now it is a bit lower. It's better than earlier.
Good, good. I asked them to make it low because it's indeed Christmas here and you listen to Christmas carols everywhere and it's annoying. Okay. Now, the next question for us to think together is, which conflict style would you like to grow in and how? So the previous three speakers mentioned the styles that they have been using often, but there are some of the styles that we tend not to use because we're afraid, because we don't want confrontation. So is there any particular conflict style from the mentioned above that you would like to learn or you would like to do it better? Let's think about this for a few seconds and then I will invite a couple of people for the reflection. Yes, Mika, please go ahead. What is the style that you would like to improve or grow in more?
As also the others said, that most of them liked collaboration the most. I'd also like to say that that's like the one that I use the most, but I'm not sure about it. And I think that's a very useful one. And I should actually try to do that more often and sort of train it. Since I kind of have the tendency to rather avoid or accommodate towards conflicts, since I kind of enjoy just not having conflicts. But it's not really a solution. So yeah, for me, it would actually be collaboration.
Thank you. Anna, please go ahead.
So for me, the one that I struggle with is compromising. So of course, collaboration is the end goal, but sometimes when you completely disagree with the other party, it's very hard to compromise with them. And of course, being the side that's getting less benefits, you feel like the other person is a bit higher than you. So that part where one time you lose, one time the other person loses, that you need to have the scale to basically keep the balance. That's the one that I would want to better myself in. But of course, collaboration is the end goal. So yes, compromising would be the one that I would want to better. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Anna. Is there anyone who would like to add on what has been said? If not, let us then proceed. Before I take some questions, I would like to go to collaboration because few of you mentioned that you would prefer, of course, a collaborative way of finding the solution. I have to say, this is the most difficult strategy to use. That is why often we don't really want to find a solution in a collaborative way because it takes time, because it's difficult, because you have to talk, because you have to crystallize the conflict, you have to understand different positions, and then basically you have to single out the solutions that work for all the parties. Of course, this is difficult, but this is worth trying because the end result actually is worth it. And then I have a couple of handouts that I have prepared for this session that I can share with you after the presentation. One of the handouts is about conflict resolution and problem solving. Do you see my screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so because I would have not, it wouldn't be possible to go deep into all the strategies, of course. So I have prepared this handout one that I will send to you. So you will see for each strategy more concrete steps that you can take. But I would like to focus on the collaboration. and the confrontation. Well, confrontation was not mentioned as a strategy, but it's kind of a different theory that is a mix of collaboration and also compromise in a way. Basically, this other theory says that in order to resolve the conflict or a problem, you have to confront the conflicting party. You cannot confront if you choose the avoidance style. You prefer to delay the conflict. But if you want to collaboratively find a solution or do a compromise, then you have to do confrontation. There are two types of confrontations in a conflict situation. One is a power confrontation, and one is called negotiation. Confrontation with power is more or less a strategy that we have already talked about. If we go back to the presentation, it's basically competing. So you want to use any means that you have to destroy the opponent. And mostly these types of strategies, power strategies, are used by people in power. And we meet them a lot in our daily life. Politicians, people who have money, people who have resources. So you basically use force or money or violence or punishment or bribery to solve the problem. And that's one of the ways to confront. But the second way to confront is actually to negotiate the solution. And that goes more into collaboration style. How do you actually negotiate a solution with another conflicting party? There are basically 4 steps. And this handout later on will help you to improve your negotiation skills. If I present it very briefly, number 1, when you start negotiations about conflict solution, is a diagnosis. You have to understand what is this conflict about. You may think it's about A, the opponent may think it's about B. So diagnosis is very important. And there are a lot of conflicts in the world, be it Arab-Israeli conflict, be it Armenia-Azerbaijan conflict, be it political, international big conflicts. Very often, parties do not agree on the subject of the conflict. So it's very good to sit and clearly understand what is that we disagree about. Then the second important step is initiation. And initiating negotiations, it's also an important skill. How to initiate it, how to go and start a conversation about conflict. Is it okay to go and scream or cry or go insane and crazy because you are hurt and offended? Or there is a better way to initiate a conversation? Should we be defensive or we should listen? I would say that, in my experience, it never helps when you are too emotional. And when you are too emotional, you really block your cognitive function and you really don't think. So it's always maybe good to handle the conflict in a while after the conflict happens. So you take time to calm down and to think about it. Sometimes we understand actually that we made a mistake and we have to go and apologize. This also happens. For example, if you get a sexist or racist comment that is targeting you, of course you can go and scream that the person is a sexist pig, a horrible person, piece of something. I cannot say it because this meeting is recorded, but you can also approach it differently and go to the person and tell that you are hurt, you really didn't like what has been said, and you would not like this to happen again. So these are different two types of initiating a conversation about a potential conflict. Then it's very important in the negotiations, when you try to solve a problem or a conflict, to listen. And active listening is very important. And the listening and initiation are very connected stages. If you go and start offending person because you are offended, it basically blocks the opponent to express his or her own point of view. They become quickly very defensive. That is why, and they don't listen. So it's important to initiate this conversation properly. And then we go to the last stage of the conflict resolution when it comes to negotiating. It's problem solving itself. This applies mostly, of course, to work conflicts. And you wouldn't go and do the steps with your partner or with your friend, but especially in the workplace, when you start solving the problem, it's important to do this 5 steps of problem solving. And these are very, very useful. I tried it. So it's useful. You clarify the problem. You try to generate a couple of solutions, basically either compromise or collaboration. So how can we handle the conflict? Let's generate a couple of scenarios. Then you decide with your colleague what is the best solution among different resolutions that you came with. And you basically agree that, well, we start implementing this solution and hopefully it works. After a while, you can be back and evaluate if the solution worked or didn't work, if the conflict is still in place or it is not. You will get this handout after the presentation together with the handout number 2. And this one will help you to understand how you can behave when you feel angry, when you think your right has been violated, when you are threatened and feel powerless. So this is kind of a recipe how to behave in a conflicting situation, how to handle aggressive behavior, and how to manage difficult behavior. Because I believe that most of you are active young people, maybe working in different organizations, and you have to meet a whole number of other people. And some of the young people that we work with at our organization, for example, they can come to our organization with a difficult behavior, aggressive behavior, and we have to find ways to respond as professionals, as youth workers, as people who work with young people. So this is especially useful. A couple of other strategies of conflict solution are also in this handout number 2. And I like especially this I message, you message strategy that we cannot try today, but please explore it further. Now, coming back, I would like to see if you have any questions. Please, if you have any questions about the discussion so far, raise your digital hand and go ahead. Please, Mika, go ahead.
Okay, I was just wondering, I had one thought when you were talking about sort of the confrontation style of approaching conflict, that is usually sort of, you know, used by especially like when power is being used or force, that's usually done by people in power. And I had just weirdly the example of the last generation that is now in Germany becoming bigger came to my mind. It's like an environmentalist group that sort of has different activities, and for example, stick their hands on streets. And it's been a big discussion about what they're doing and if they should be in prison or whatsoever. And I was just wondering if, in your opinion, especially when we're facing a problem such as climate change, if it is not sometimes reasonable to also look at sort of this confrontation with force approach rather than collaboration, if that doesn't seem to really work. Just sort of the thought.
Maybe to clarify the questions, do you mean young people, for example, confronting the authorities with a force or protesting violently for climate? That's what you mean, basically?
Kind of, yes. That sort of, as if it can't be legitimized and, sort of morally right to say, okay, we take a step that, maybe usually shouldn't be done, but, looking at the scope of the problem that we're facing, it can be justified. And that can also be a valid approach.
Yeah. Well, I am all in for protesting and manifesting manifesting the disappointment that we have. But I also believe that this can be always done in a rather peaceful way and not violently. Here we have a saying that in cases when you don't really have a solution and all your methods have been already used, then you can maybe do extreme things. Yeah. And maybe there have been a lot of cases when people have sacrificed themselves, jumped from the bridge, or did really something that was not done before to bring the attention of the authorities to one or another topic. For example, this has happened with the women's movement or for the right of voting. Well, there have been a group of radical feminists, now they are called like that in the history, who have actually, certain people have died for the vote of right during the horsing competition. Maybe there's also a movie about that, you can watch it. So this suffrage movement was quite radical back in the time, but thanks to their advocacy and the work, they have enabled women to vote. So few people died, but millions of people have benefited from them on. But however, I would still say that there is always possible to find a solution in a peaceful way. And there is a concept of non-violent civic disobedience. I am all for it. You can always disobey, you can always protest in a peaceful and non-violent way without risking your life, health, and the life and health of your peers. Yeah, I understand that by not acting for climate properly, we're risking lives of millions. That's also true. But what can we do? I think this is a food for thought for the next discussions that you are having within this exchange program. You will be having a meeting on climate advocacy, for example. And I think this is a question that can be raised there as well. What can we do for climate, to fight against climate change in a peaceful and constructive way? And thank you for an interesting question.
Thanks for that.
Are there any reactions to what has been said? This was my opinion, but maybe some of you think that young people should get radicalized and, I don't know, and fight for climate justice in other different ways that are there. Please, Barbara.
Okay, I would answer this from a perspective of an activist. I've been an activist for close to 5 years now, and the approach that I work with Greenpeace, and the approach that we use is nonviolence. So nonviolence really works a lot, especially because there's so many strategies that you can use just apart from like, you know, being violent. You can also be radical and still not be violent at the end of the day. Like there's so many things that you can do, like so long as you know that you're right and you know that what you're doing makes sense and you're fighting for the greater good. There's so many things that you can do without actually getting physical, because there's so many actions that we've done before that have had an impact without raising a stone or get someone getting hurt. Well, I won't lie, sometimes the aggression might not come from the activists, but it might come from other people, like external aggression from maybe the police or other people. But for as long as you try and be calm, it also becomes weird for them to hurt you when you're being calm. So I think, yeah, I think at this point you also apply the avoidance one, the avoidance strategy. Like if someone is being violent to you and then you decide to be calm, they find it funny if they continue being violent. So there's so many things that we can do. There's research that we can do, and if, for example, you decide to apply litigation, you go to court with proven research. If you're lobbying, there are also so many things that you can also do apart from just going on the streets. Over.
Thank you so much. And I often say that violence actually brings more violence and hate brings more hate. Very often what we see is that, be it climate activists, be it human rights defenders, when they use violent tactics, when they are offensive, this really discredits the whole environmental movement, the whole human rights movement, because we don't want people who are in this civic activism to be associated with violence and hate. We want them to be associated more with future, with hope, with bringing out the concerns. But once you become violent, then this will be used by the police or authorities, not only against you as a violent activist, but against the whole movement, saying that, oh, you are all radical extremists who are not really for climate change, but you have maybe political agenda or some other agendas, etc. So it's very important not to discredit the work that other activists and human rights defenders are doing. And it's very good that we are basically now building bridge between the topic that we covered and the actual topic of the exchange, that is Youth for Climate, right? If there is any other remark or question, please, this is the space, because we are slowly closing today's session. It's been already an hour that we are together. So we have, let's say, some 15 more minutes to have Q&A if there are any questions. And I know that it's not very easy to sit online for hours. So we will try to fit in 1 hour and a half. Please, any other questions, comments, reactions? If not, I'd like to thank you for spending this time with me. Hopefully it was to the point and you have grasped some new information. Barbara, it's a new hand or it's a previous hand? Because I see you have a hand now.
It's a new hand. I was gonna ask, maybe would you advise, say for example, I had a couple of maybe two scenarios where let me just check again, where you okay, yeah. So for example, like in the past where like these ancient Chinese emperors would seem like they're using once they rise to power, they would seem like they are bringing their enemies
And
closer.
apologize. Could you please speak a bit louder because I cannot hear you well?
Oh, okay. I wanted to like maybe hear your take on this. So is it okay to use for example, one method of conflict resolution, maybe which might seem selfish, but in the end, in my end, work out for the greater good? Say for example, how ancient Chinese emperors would bring their enemies closer by like gifting them and pardoning them, while yet they would try and okay, they do that in the sense of avoiding conflict in the future so that they don't have like enemies. So would you like advise for you to use your position of power, say to do something that might seem good, maybe with a selfish interest, but in the end might work out for the greater good?
That's indeed a very interesting, but also very philosophical question. It's like from the movie when, I don't remember which movie is that, but it said good guys should do bad things to make bad guys to pay. That's how it sounds. But I think not every mean is justifying our actions, and we have to be mindful about what we do and how we do it. And I don't think that we can or should use any means that there are out there for our activism, even if in the end we think it's for a greater good. If we harm anyone, if our activism is dangerous or endangering lives of other people or risks their health, even if your ideas are very if the ideas are very noble, you have to stop and think for a while, do I want to sacrifice all this even if I have a noble idea? One example is the Taliban movement. You are very well aware probably of this extremist terrorist group. It's a very bad example in this context, of course, but a lot of young people that are recruited to extremist movements, such as Taliban or ISIS in the past, they have believed that they are joining a very noble organization with a noble and dignified mission and aim. Of course, they understood that there is a lot of violence that they have to commit, but they truly believed, and many of young people who join extremist movements, they believe that they do it for a greater good. However, they end up in these criminal organizations and they destroy their lives. I don't know if this was a good example, but still I think whatever our idea for the future is, we should be very cautious when we use the strategies. We should not look for easy and quick solutions, but we have to look maybe for more difficult, far-fetched, but sustainable and long-term solutions. And I think if we talk about climate activism, the climate activism should have started yesterday, 100 years ago, and it's probably already late. We should have acted long before. But even now, when we think about solutions or we want to engage more young people in the activism for climate justice, we have to offer them safe spaces for the activism. And we have to work around strategies that probably don't bring results today, but can bring results in the future. I don't believe in short solutions for climate change. The harm that has been caused to the planet is enormous, and it continues every day. And there is no easy solution or one click that can undo all the things that have been already done. So I think it requires a lot of work, a lot of hard solutions, and a lot of political will and decisions from the top politicians. There is a lot we can do as young people, but there are things that are not up to us entirely. So we have to make the responsibles to be responsible and accountable in a safe and a constructive, collaborative way. I don't know if I answered your question. Maybe, yeah, the question itself was quite philosophical, and I think the answer was also kind of a bit vague. If there are any more questions, okay. It seems that we are close to the end of today's session. I thank everyone who have joined today, especially those who have actively contributed. It was my pleasure to spend this hour and a half with you. So I think it's time to close the session. I wish you all a very good evening and more interesting and productive sessions ahead during the week.